The Huntress Oath. For centuries, there have been whispers of creatures lurking in the shadows, dismissed as myth and legend. Yet, hidden across the world, these supernatural beings are very real. Alongside them, humans swore an ancient oath to protect their kin by hunting the creatures of the night. They called themselves the Midnight Guard. The Guard's roots can be traced back to 1625, when Esmé Du Bois, a fierce and respected leader in a small French village, led a brutal witch hunt. She believed she was purging evil from the land, sentencing dozens to death. Her crusade against the dark forces attracted followers who shared her zealous hatred of anything deemed unnatural. They became hunters, determined to rid the world of creatures they considered evil. But their blind faith would eventually be their undoing. Esmé's hunts were merciless, targeting anyone suspected of witchcraft or dark magic. As their numbers grew, the Guard set its sights on the forests, where they believed the heart of the supernatural lurked. They encountered and destroyed many innocent beings simply because they didn't fit into their rigid worldview of purity. Esmé had written 3 volumes on witchcraft, lycanthropy, and demonic possession. However, none of her knowledge prepared her for the terror that would soon descend upon her village. One night, a creature unlike any the hunters had faced appeared. Its skin was ashen, its eyes glowing crimson. Its fangs gleamed in the moonlight as it moved with lightning speed, more dangerous than any lichen or witch Esmé had ever hunted. The villagers who survived that night spoke of a massacre, the creature draining their friends and family of blood before vanishing into the woods. Esmé, desperate and afraid, realized too late that her crusade had provoked an ancient evil. This monster, driven by vengeance, was not content with mere bloodshed. As villagers turned feral from its bite, Esmé's attempts to stop the creature only led to chaos and bloodshed within her ranks. During a violent struggle, one of the turned villagers nearly claimed Esmé's life. In a desperate act, she impaled the creature with a sharpened branch, its body collapsing into a pool of blackened blood. But as the battle momentarily subsided, the creature reappeared, watching with cold amusement from the shadows. A voice echoed in Esmé's mind, cold and mocking. "Your god has abandoned you, foolish huntress. You slaughtered my kind, and now I shall make you pay." Esmé could barely speak, terror gripping her heart as the creature stepped from the darkness. It was taller than she had imagined, more menacing in the dim light. The voice continued, but this time the creature's fanged mouth moved. "You think you rid the world of evil? It was your god who cursed us. We were forsaken long before you took up your petty crusade. Now you will see the true horror of what you have wrought." The creature's clawed hand shot forward, seizing Esmé by the throat. She gasped, struggling against the monster's immense strength. Her vision blurred as she felt the pulse of her life ebbing away. With a cruel laugh, the creature whispered in her ear, "My name is Nyx. Remember it well, for you will be the last of your kind to speak it." Nyx threw Esmé to the ground, and with a snap of his fingers, his newly turned thralls swarmed her. As Esmé's vision faded, all she could think of was how wrong she had been. Nyx had won. Generations later, the Midnight Guard still survives, its numbers fewer, but its determination no less fierce. With centuries of accumulated knowledge, they continue their hunt against vampires and other creatures of the night. But the threat of Nyx and his growing empire of vampires looms ever larger. 2 types of vampires now dominate the legend: purebloods, born from ancient lines, and fledglings, humans turned by a bite. The purebloods are stronger, faster, and far more dangerous. Their senses sharp, their hunger controlled. Fledglings, however, struggle with their bloodlust, often succumbing to their savage nature. They serve their sire, the pureblood who turned them, forever bound to the one who cursed them. In the swampy depths of Louisiana, where the Guard has a base, a new generation of hunters carries the torch. Among them is Raven Winters, a sharp and ambitious recruit who, despite her youth, has already made a name for herself. Under the mentorship of the hardened Captain Leah Blackwood, Raven is about to embark on her first real mission, the first hunt. The sun had barely risen when Raven awoke to the sound of birds calling through the thick, humid air. She rubbed the sleep from her eyes, pulled on her uniform, a dark green jacket and matching trousers, and strapped on her belt of weapons, complete with her favorite crossbow. Today was the day she'd prove herself to the Midnight Guard. Walking through the thick foliage, the sunlight filtered through the Spanish moss, giving everything a hazy, dreamlike glow. The base was already buzzing with activity, hunters preparing for another day of drills and missions. Raven made her way to the armory, grabbing a few silver-tipped arrows and sliding them into her quiver. She barely noticed Leah approaching until the older woman spoke. "Look who's up early for once," Leah said, her lips curving into a rare smile. She was a tall woman, her dark hair streaked with gray, her eyes sharp and calculating. Raven rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her smile. "I've been getting better at it. What do you need?" Leah's smile faded into a more serious expression. "I have a mission for you. Something more than just training." Raven's heart leapt at the words. "What is it?" Leah motioned for her to follow, and the two made their way to the map table in Leah's tent. "A team from one of our sister bases went missing near the swamp's edge, beyond our safe zone. I'm sending a group out to find them." Raven's pulse quickened. Finally, a chance to prove herself in the field. "Am I leading the group?" she asked, her grin wide with excitement. Leah chuckled. "Not yet, kid. But if you bring them back safely, maybe one day. You leave at dawn tomorrow. Get some rest and be ready." Raven nodded, the excitement still coursing through her. She knew this mission was her chance to show everyone, especially Leah, what she was capable of. As she walked back to her tent, her mind raced with possibilities. Tomorrow, she'd face the dangers of the swamp and whatever else waited beyond the safety of the Midnight Guard's walls. But no matter what came her way, Raven Winters was ready. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Raven found herself restless in her tent. The excitement of her first real mission buzzed in her veins like a current, keeping her mind sharp and alert despite the gathering dusk. She replayed Leah's words in her mind, imagining herself charging into danger, her crossbow steady, arrows striking true. The missing hunters, the thrill of the unknown. It was everything she'd trained for. But with the thrill came the anxiety. Nyx, the ancient vampire king, still cast a long shadow over the Midnight Guard. Stories of his purebloods and their deadly strength haunted her thoughts. Would this mission bring her face to face with one of his servants? Or worse, Nyx himself? Pushing the doubts aside, Raven packed her gear. She double-checked her quiver, counted her silver-tipped arrows, and placed a vial of holy water in her belt pouch. Her fingers brushed over the small wooden stake hanging from her waist, her last resort if the fight ever came too close. At dawn, Raven met her team at the edge of the camp's safe zone. Four other hunters stood with her, their faces tense with focus. Leah had chosen them well. Maddox, a burly fighter known for his brute strength. Zara, a master of tracking and silent kills. Theo, a medic and expert with poisons. And Amara, a seasoned veteran who had faced vampires in battle before. Amara nodded at Raven, her dark eyes flicking over the recruit with quiet approval. "You ready for this, kid?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Raven squared her shoulders, determined not to show the nerves rattling her chest. "I've been ready for years." Amara grinned, a rare sight, and gestured to the path ahead. "Good. Let's move." The group made their way into the thick swamp, the air heavy with moisture, clinging to their skin like a second layer. Sunlight barely filtered through the towering cypress trees, their twisted roots jutting out of the murky waters. The deeper they ventured, the more the familiar sounds of camp life faded, replaced by the eerie silence of the wilderness. The only noise was the occasional squawk of a bird and the rustling of leaves underfoot. Zara took point, her eyes scanning the ground for tracks. Raven followed close behind, her crossbow ready. The path ahead grew narrower as they reached the edge of the safe zone. Here, the hunters marked the boundaries of where they could move freely, and beyond it lay unknown dangers. "We're close," Zara whispered, stopping to crouch by a muddy patch of ground. "These are fresh tracks." "Human." Imara leaned over her shoulder, inspecting the ground. "Looks like our hunters went off course," Maddox grunted, adjusting the large axe on his back. "Why the hell would they leave the path?" "They might not have had a choice," Theo muttered, his sharp eyes scanning the trees around them. "Let's just hope we're not too late." They pressed on, and the swamp seemed to close in on them. The air grew colder, and the sunlight dimmed, as if the land itself was warning them to turn back. But Raven's determination burned stronger now. Something was wrong here. Something she couldn't explain, but she felt it deep in her bones. A few hours passed, and just as Raven began to wonder if they'd wandered too far, Zara raised a hand to signal a stop. Up ahead, through the thick tangle of vines and trees, something glinted in the low light. "A camp," Zara whispered. "Or what's left of it." They moved cautiously, their weapons drawn as they approached the clearing. Raven's heart sank as she took in the scene. There were signs of a struggle. Overturned gear, broken weapons, and patches of blood staining the ground. But there were no bodies, just eerie silence. "They didn't make it far," Maddox said grimly, kneeling by a torn piece of fabric from a midnight guard uniform. Theo moved forward, scanning the ground for more clues. "No bodies, though. That means either they're still alive, or they've been taken," Imara finished, her voice low. Raven's pulse quickened. Vampires rarely left bodies behind. If the hunters had been taken, it likely meant they were either turned or worse, being held for some darker purpose. "We need to split up," Raven said, surprising herself with the suggestion. "If they're still alive, we have to cover more ground and find them fast." Imara raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Maddox, Zara, head north. Theo, Raven with me. We'll head west. Don't engage unless necessary. Regroup here in an hour." Raven moved alongside Theo and Imara as they ventured deeper into the swamp, the silence between them heavy with tension. Theo kept his eyes on the ground, searching for any signs of movement, while Imara remained focused ahead, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. As they neared the edge of a dark pool of water, something rustled in the underbrush. Raven froze, her crossbow aimed at the source of the sound. Her heart hammered in her chest as a figure emerged, stumbling, bloodied, and barely standing. It was one of the missing hunters. "Help me," the man rasped, collapsing to his knees. Theo rushed forward, kneeling beside the man to assess his injuries. Raven's breath caught as she recognized the bite marks on his neck, the telltale sign of a vampire attack. The man's skin was pale, his eyes bloodshot, and his body shook with uncontrollable tremors. "He's been bitten," Theo said grimly. "We don't have much time." Imara's face hardened. "We need to know what happened. Can you speak?" The man's eyes flickered with fear as he struggled to form words. We were ambushed. They came out of nowhere. Took the others. I tried to fight, but..." Raven leaned in closer, her hand gripping the crossbow tighter. "Who took them?" "Vampires." The man nodded weakly. "Purebloods, they're preparing something. Something big. Said they were waiting for their king." "Nix." Raven's blood ran cold at the mention of the vampire king. If Nix's purebloods were involved, this was far worse than a simple search and rescue mission. Imara's eyes met Raven's, and for the first time, Raven saw a flicker of uncertainty in the veteran's gaze. "We need to get back to camp," Imara said, her voice tense. "This is bigger than we thought." But as they turned to leave, a low, menacing growl echoed from the trees, freezing them in place. Raven's heart skipped a beat as the air around them seemed to thicken, the shadows growing darker. From the underbrush, a figure stepped forward, tall and menacing, its eyes glowing red. It was a pureblood, its fangs bared in a wicked grin. Raven raised her crossbow, her pulse racing. This was it, the true test of her training. But before she could fire, the pureblood spoke, its voice dripping with malice. "You think you can hunt us, little girl? You don't know what's coming." And with that, the battle began.